Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Growing up, my family lived next door to the meanest neighbor on the block. She had a reputation in the neighborhood for being difficult, and we quickly discovered that she was particularly unpleasant towards us. She would scream at us, file false noise complaints, and even destroy our belongings. She was the bane of our existence, and we had to live with her behavior for years. However, one day we received some shocking news. The neighbor next door had failed to pay her debts and her house was going up for foreclosure. My parents, who were both successful entrepreneurs, saw an opportunity and decided to attend the auction. The day of the auction arrived and we all went to the courthouse, including the neighbor. She was desperately trying to bid on her own house, but it was clear that she didn't have the funds. To our amazement, my parents ended up winning the auction and became the new owners of the house next door. But this was only the beginning of our problems. The house had fallen into disrepair over the years, and my parents soon realized that they had a lot of work to do. The renovation process was long and grueling, but my parents were determined to transform the old, run-down house into something beautiful. They worked tirelessly for months, repainting every room, replacing the insulation, and even redoing the electrical and plumbing systems. It was an exhausting process, but the end result was a stunning home that was unrecognizable from the rundown house it had once been. Finally, it was time to rent out the property. My parents were determined to find the perfect tenants, and after an extensive search, they finally found a young couple who seemed perfect for the house. For a while, everything seemed to be going well. The new tenants were respectful and responsible, and they kept the house in excellent condition. But one day, my parents received a call from the local authorities. The neighbor had reported the new tenants for violating noise regulations. At first, my parents were confused. The new tenants had always been quiet and respectful, and they couldn't imagine what the problem was. But when they dug deeper, they discovered that the neighbor was up to her old tricks again. She had been calling the police on the new tenants regularly, making up false complaints and causing trouble whenever she could. It was clear that she hadn't changed one bit, even after losing her own house. My parents knew they had to do something. They didn't want the new tenants to get into trouble because of the neighbor's antics, but they also didn't want to risk getting into legal trouble themselves. So they decided to confront the neighbor and try to reason with her. To their surprise, the neighbor was actually willing to listen. She had been struggling with her own personal demons, and the loss of her home had only made things worse. My parents listened to her story and offered her some advice and support. They even invited her to come over and see the renovated house. To their amazement, the neighbor accepted their offer. She came over one afternoon and saw the beautiful new house that had once been her own. She was stunned by the transformation and even shed a tear. From that day on, the neighbor was a changed woman. She started to treat us and the rest of the neighborhood with kindness and respect, and she even volunteered to help out with community events. It was as if the renovation of the house next door had sparked a change in her. In the end, the neighbor became a valued member of the community, and my parents were proud to have been a part of her transformation. Update. It's been several years since the renovation of the house next door, and things have only gotten better. The neighbor is still a cherished member of our community, and she's become something of a local celebrity. Her transformation from the neighbor next door to the kind-hearted neighbor has inspired many people in the community, and she's even been featured in local news articles. My parents, meanwhile, have expanded their rental property business and now own several other properties in the area. They credit the renovation of the neighbor's old house as the catalyst for their success, as it taught them the value of hard work and perseverance. As for the house next door, it's still rented out to tenants who love the beautiful home and the friendly neighborhood. In fact, the house has become something of a landmark in the community, with many people stopping by to admire its transformation. But the story doesn't end there. One day, my parents received a phone call from an unexpected source. It was the neighbor, and she had some news to share. She had been diagnosed with a serious illness, and she knew that her time was running out. But she wanted to do something to give back to the community that had welcomed her with open arms. So she donated a significant portion of her savings to a local charity that helps families in need. It was a touching gesture, and it showed just how much the neighbor had changed over the years. Sadly, the neighbor passed away a few months later, but her legacy lives on in the community. The renovated house next door serves as a reminder of the power of transformation, and the neighbor's donation to the local charity has helped countless families in need. As for my family, we will always be grateful for the experience of renovating the house next door. It taught us the value of hard work, perseverance, and kindness, and it brought us closer to our community. We will never forget the neighbor next door, and we will always be proud to have been a part of her transformation. The next one is an entitled People Story. I've been working as a nanny for a family for almost a year now. They have a lovely home in a beautiful neighborhood, but the parking situation has been a bit of a headache. The area doesn't have any driveways or street parking, but instead has small parking lots that residents can use with a valid parking pass. Fortunately, my employers were kind enough to provide me with a pass that I could display on my windshield. At first, everything was going smoothly. I would park my car in the designated parking lot, display my parking pass, and go about my day without any issues. However, one day I returned to my car to find a threatening note on my windshield. The note said that I wasn't allowed to park in that lot, and that if I did, they would have my car towed. I was confused and worried. I knew that I was parking legally with my valid parking pass, but someone was clearly targeting me. I tried to brush it off, but it didn't stop there. A few days later, I discovered that my license plates were missing. It was a shock, and I felt violated. I immediately went to my employers, and they were just as alarmed as I was. The father of the family I worked for drove me home and offered to pay for my train fare while I waited for new plates. I was grateful for his kindness, but I couldn't shake off the fear that someone was targeting me. A few days later, it happened again. My new license plates were stolen, and I felt helpless. My employers suggested that we set up hidden cameras to catch the thief in the act. We did, and sure enough, we caught our neighbor stealing my plates. We were all stunned. It was hard to believe that someone who lived so close to us could be so vindictive. The next day, we took the video evidence to the police, and the neighbor was arrested. He admitted to stealing my plates and apologized for his actions. However, it wasn't until the trial that we learned the full extent of his actions. It turns out that the neighbor had been targeting me for weeks. He had been harassing and intimidating me in different ways, from leaving notes on my car to vandalizing it. He'd even gone as far as to call the towing company to try and have my car towed, but they had seen my parking pass and refused to tow it. The judge was appalled at the neighbor's behavior and sentenced him to community service, restitution, and probation. He was also ordered to stay away from me and the family I worked for. It was a relief to know that he wouldn't be able to bother me anymore, but it was still a frightening experience. The family I worked for went above and beyond to make sure I was okay. They provided me with extra security measures such as a car alarm and security cameras to ensure my safety. They also gave me a generous bonus to help cover the cost of the stolen license plates and the stress I had endured. After the incident, I decided to take a self-defense course to feel more empowered and secure. It was a great decision, and I felt more confident in my ability to protect myself. I also made sure to park in different lots to avoid being an easy target. As time went on, I slowly regained my sense of security. However, the neighbor's probationary period was coming to an end, and I was nervous that he might try to retaliate. One day, while I was walking to my car, I saw him walking towards me. I froze, unsure of what to do. To my surprise, he apologized for his behavior and asked if we could talk. I was hesitant at first, but he seemed sincere. He explained that he had been going through a difficult time in his life and had taken out his frustrations on me. He was ashamed of his actions and wanted to make it right. We ended up talking for hours, and he opened up to me about his struggles. It was a side of him that I hadn't seen before, and I felt empathy for him. I could see that he was genuinely remorseful for what he had done. Over time, we developed a friendship, and he even helped me with some odd jobs around my house. It was a strange turn of events, but I was grateful for the opportunity to move past the incident and find some common ground with my neighbor. As for my job, I continued to work for the family I was with, but the incident had left me feeling uneasy. I eventually decided to pursue a new career, but I still keep in touch with the family I worked for. They were like family to me, and I was grateful for their support during a difficult time. The experience taught me the importance of safety and being aware of my surroundings. It also taught me the power of forgiveness and second chances. I never thought I would be able to move past the incident with my neighbor, but I was glad that I did. It was a valuable lesson that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Update. A few months after the incident, I received a letter from the neighbor. He had moved away but wanted to reach out and thank me for giving him a second chance. He said that our conversation had changed his life and that he was in a much better place now. I was touched by his words and was happy to see that he had taken responsibility for his actions. It was a reminder that people can change and that forgiveness is a powerful thing. I wished him well and was glad that we were able to move past the incident and find some common ground. The next one is a petty revenge story. I met my husband Jack when our mutual friends got married. I was the maid of honor and he was the best man. We hit it off right away, and it wasn't long before we started dating. A few years later, we got married and started a family. Our friends, Hobag and her husband, were our closest friends. We spent a lot of time together, and Hobag became our attorney when we were thinking of selling franchises for our business. Jack and Hobag spent a lot of time working on contracts and discussing business strategies. I didn't think anything of it, as they had always been good friends. However, things started to change when Jack and Hobag went on a business trip to New York City. Hobag's husband called me and told me that they had booked only one hotel room and were acting lovey-dovey. I was in shock and didn't know what to do. When Jack came back from the trip, I decided to confront him. At first he denied everything, but eventually he admitted to having an affair with Hobag. I was devastated. How could he do this to me? And how could Hobag, my closest friend, betray me like this? I spent the next few weeks trying to come to terms with what had happened. I couldn't eat or sleep, and I felt like my world had been turned upside down. I had trusted Jack and Hobag completely, and they had both betrayed me. After a lot of soul-searching, I decided to file for divorce. It was a painful process, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I wanted to move on with my life and start over. During the divorce proceedings, Jack and Hobag tried to take everything from me. They wanted to ruin me financially and emotionally, but I was determined to come out on top. I hired the best lawyers and fought tooth and nail to get what I deserved. In the end, I won the divorce settlement. Jack and Hobag were forced to pay me a significant amount of money, and I got custody of our children. It was a bittersweet victory, as I had lost my husband and my best friend, but I knew I had to move on. After the divorce, I focused on rebuilding my life. I started a new business and met new friends who supported me through this difficult time. I also went to therapy and learned how to cope with the pain of betrayal. It wasn't easy, but I knew that I had to heal and move forward. Years went by, and I had finally put the past behind me. I had a successful business, and my children were happy and thriving. But then, out of nowhere, Jack contacted me. He said he had changed and wanted to make things right. I was skeptical at first, but I decided to hear him out. We met for coffee, and Jack apologized for everything he had done. He said he had made a mistake and had realized how much he had hurt me. He also said that he had been seeing a therapist and had been working on himself. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to forgive him and start over, but another part of me was scared of getting hurt again. After a lot of thought, I decided to give him another chance. It wasn't easy, but we worked on our relationship and eventually got back together. Update: Jack and I have been back together for 5 years now, and things are better than ever. We both learned from our mistakes and have worked hard to rebuild our relationship. We still see a therapist regularly, and we communicate openly and honestly. We also make an effort to spend time together and prioritize our relationship. It had been 10 years since I had forgiven Jack and taken him back. We had rebuilt our relationship from the ground up, and things were going well. Our children had grown up and had started families of their own, and we were enjoying our retirement. However, something happened that shook our relationship to its core. Jack was diagnosed with a serious illness. It was something that would require extensive treatment, and there was no guarantee that he would recover fully. I was devastated when I heard the news. I had already lost him once, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing him again. We went through the treatments together, and it was a challenging time for both of us. But we never gave up hope, and we were determined to beat this illness. During the treatments, we had a lot of time to talk and reflect on our relationship. We talked about the past and how we had both made mistakes, but we also talked about how much we had grown together and how much we loved each other. Jack's illness brought us closer than ever before. We spent every moment we could together, and we made sure to cherish every moment. We went on trips, took long walks, and had deep conversations. We were grateful for each other and for the time we had left. Eventually, Jack's treatments were successful, and he recovered fully. It was a huge relief for both of us, and we were grateful for the second chance we had been given. We knew that life was precious, and that we needed to make the most of every moment. Today, Jack and I are closer than ever before. We know that we've been through a lot, but we're grateful for what we have. We make sure to communicate openly and honestly, and we never take each other for granted. Our relationship has been through so much, but it's also grown stronger because of it. We know that we're lucky to have each other, and we make sure to cherish every moment together. Life is unpredictable, but we're grateful for the love we share and the life we've built together. The last one is an entitled people story. It was a beautiful summer day when I arrived at the office for my shift as a customer service representative. The sun was shining and the birds were chirping, making it the perfect day to be at work. As I walked towards my desk, I saw my coworker, Emma, waiting for me. Emma and I were not that close, but we had worked together for a few months and occasionally had conversations during our lunch breaks. As I approached my desk, Emma asked if I could give her a ride home after our shift ended. I was surprised by her request, since we had never talked about anything outside of work, but I agreed to it since I was going in that direction anyway. The day went by quickly, and soon it was time to leave. I gathered my things and headed towards the exit, where I saw Emma waiting for me. She smiled and we walked towards my car. As we got in, she thanked me for the ride, and we started driving towards her house. We chatted about our day, and I was surprised by how friendly she was. Suddenly, I noticed that Emma was constantly checking her phone and seemed to be getting more and more anxious as we drove. I asked her if everything was okay, but she just brushed it off and said that everything was fine. As we got closer to her house, the traffic got heavier, and we got stuck in a traffic jam. Emma started fidgeting and checking her phone more frequently. I tried to make small talk to ease the tension, but she seemed distant and preoccupied. Finally, we arrived at her house, and she thanked me again for the ride. As I was getting ready to leave, she leaned in and whispered, "Thanks for the ride, I really needed it. You're such a good friend." I was taken aback by her comment since we had only talked a few times at work, but I brushed it off and drove away. Days went by and Emma started acting strangely around me. She would avoid eye contact and not talk to me unless it was work-related. I couldn't help but feel like something was off. One day I overheard Emma talking to another coworker about me. She was saying how nice I was and how she couldn't wait to spend more time with me outside of work. I felt uncomfortable and uneasy about her behavior. I didn't want to make any assumptions, so I decided to confront her about it. I asked her if everything was okay and if she wanted to talk about anything. At first, she denied that anything was wrong, but then she broke down and started crying. She confessed that she had developed feelings for me and had been waiting outside of work for hours just to catch a glimpse of me. She had been following me on social media and had even tried to find out where I lived. I was shocked and didn't know how to react. I had never experienced anything like this before and didn't know how to handle the situation. I tried to be understanding and sympathetic, but I knew that I had to set boundaries and make it clear that I was not interested in her romantically. For the next few weeks, Emma continued to act strangely around me. She would send me messages on social media and try to initiate conversations outside of work. I tried to be polite, but I knew that I had to distance myself from her to avoid any further issues. One day as I was leaving work, I saw Emma waiting for me outside of the building. She looked anxious and upset, and I could tell that something was wrong. She approached me and asked if I could give her a ride home. I politely declined and told her that I had plans after work and couldn't take her home. Emma seemed disappointed and asked if we could at least talk for a few minutes. I hesitated, but eventually agreed since I didn't want to be rude. We sat down on a nearby bench and Emma started talking about her personal life. She told me about her family, her hobbies, and her dreams. I tried to be supportive and listened attentively, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. As we were talking, Emma suddenly leaned in and kissed me. I was caught off guard and didn't know how to react. I pushed her away and told her that I was not interested in her romantically. She seemed upset and started crying. I tried to console her, but she just kept crying and saying that she loved me. I knew that I had to end the conversation and get away from her. I got up and told her that I had to go. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I'll never give up on us. You'll see." I was shaken by the encounter and didn't know what to do. I knew that I had to report Emma's behavior to our supervisor, but I was afraid that it would make things worse. I talked to a few of my coworkers about it, and they encouraged me to report it since they had also noticed Emma's strange behavior. I finally mustered the courage to report Emma's behavior to our supervisor. She took it seriously and launched an investigation. They found out that Emma had been following me on social media, had been waiting outside of work for hours, and had been harassing me and other coworkers. Emma was immediately fired, and I felt relieved that the situation had been resolved. However, I was still shaken by the experience and felt uneasy about going to work. I decided to take a few days off to clear my head and talk to a therapist about what had happened. Update. It's been a few months since the incident with Emma, and I'm happy to say that I'm doing much better. I've been seeing a therapist and have learned coping mechanisms to deal with anxiety and stress. The company has also implemented new policies to ensure the safety and well-being of their employees, including a zero-tolerance policy for harassment. I've also made new friends at work who I can trust and rely on. However, I'm still cautious around new people and have learned to trust my gut instincts. It's important to always speak up and report any suspicious behavior to protect ourselves and others. I hope that my story can help others who may be going through a similar experience and encourage them to seek help and support. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.